see me either. I can't see anybody. But
This
anyway.
meeting is being recorded.
Okay.
So I just thought for those of you that don't know me, just a little bit of a very brief introduction to you. So my name is Sharon Barcock. I'm based in Dubai in the Middle East. Been here for approximately 20 years now. I cannot believe I'm saying that. But I actually started my working career really in a very different sphere. I started it off in the banking and finance industry. And I kind of worked in that field until I kind of thought there must be more to life than doing this every day. And in my spare time, I'd actually been teaching fitness. I'd actually studied dance when I was at school and college. But I've never really been a person that's into acting or singing. So it was really more of a pastime than a career. But I kind of always thought it would be nice to do something with this. And so I basically started teaching fitness after studying dance. I used to be very shy, and teaching kind of brought me out of my shell, and it was a great way of connecting with people. And I think the feedback that I got from teaching people just really helped me overcome my shyness. And so that was really the start of my journey into the wellness industry. I then moved into a role as a fitness instructor at a country house hotel. And this picture here in the middle is the first property that I actually worked out of, which is Stapleford Park in Leicestershire in the UK. And this property to me, it didn't matter what you paid me, and I actually got paid nothing really. The hotel was so beautiful, the environment was so beautiful. It's really kind of, I guess, what got me into hotels. And it was a great introduction to hotels and luxury hotels, I have to add. So
Sharon,
afterwards, yes.
Can I ask if you can press that little slideshow thing at the bottom there? So it puts it onto slideshow version. Can you see where my cursor is at all?
I cannot, no.
Okay, so at the bottom of your screen, the little slideshow.
Is this the...
Because we can only see the first slide and not that second slide.
Okay.
So it's showing us the whole deck. Are you not able to put slideshow view on? So you're at the top. I need...
No, hang on a second, hang on. No, that's not it either.
So on the bottom right hand of your screen, you know where it's got the percentage increase and decrease in size of screen? There's, can you see where that is? Bottom right hand side of your screen.
Don't have that on here.
Isn't it showing on your side?
No.
Oh. Okay, what if you go...
Top left corner, play from beginning. Top left corner, play from beginning.
Oh, that's a good
Under
idea.
file.
Top left corner, Sharon, play from beginning. Can you see? Further left.
I don't have anything like that on mine, but just hang
Further
on.
left. You're almost
Nothing.
there. Can you see it says from beginning? Because we can see it.
I don't have that at all. Just... Nope.
You all... Okay, now your cursor's down at the bottom. Because we
I
can't...
think you're getting something different to me.
Okay, what if you stop sharing and then try again?
Yeah.
Okay, let's try again.
That's a good start, wasn't it?
No, it's okay. It's just that I want to see that slide when you said the property and then I couldn't see it.
Let's try again. So there should be a slide here with multiple pictures.
Yes, now there is. Okay, and if you say from beginning, the left, yeah, you were on it in a second now. No, not a little bit further down. Can you see where it says from beginning? Or can't you see?
No, I can't see that on here, unfortunately, because
okay,
every time...
Andy, Andy is saying, try Shift F5. Let's see if that works. Try Shift F5. Let's see.
That's not doing anything on my side.
Okay, well, now we can see the one picture. So I'll just tell you when to go to the next one. Okay, now we can see the one with multiple.
Is this the slide that says a bit about me?
Yes, now we can see it.
Okay, perfect. Okay, right. So this hotel is really kind of what got me interested in hotels and kind of really led me down the path of hotels. And so obviously from this particular property, I then continued my journey in the UK, working for a huge golf resort in the UK and then moving to Champneys in the City of London. And from there, I made my move into international overseas and came to Dubai. And, you know, that's been a really interesting journey for me, starting as a fitness instructor and then kind of moving across to now where I am in Hilton in a regional role. So shall we try the next slide?
Yes.
Has it moved?
No.
No. I have a feeling it's only showing you whatever.
So we can see it on the left-hand side. It says developing a culture of win, but we can't see the actual slide.
You can see the slide. Okay.
So I don't know how you got that one to.
Oh, it's doing different things. So, for now.
That's quite strange that it's not. Okay, now it's gone to slide number 6. Now 5, 4, there. Back 3, there. There we go. Now you're on it.
Okay, I don't think it's going to move again though. Has it moved now?
Yes, it has.
Okay, so now you've got 6 blue boxes.
No, now we have developing a culture of win. The heading, developing a culture of win.
So shall we just forget the presentation and I'll just talk through it?
Well, I'd like to try because it looks so great. Or maybe try and get us to the blue boxes and then we can stay there. There.
Or
We're
how
at the blue
about
boxes.
So what are you
send the
seeing now?
presentation to Marisa?
Yeah.
You could try and do that. Okay, we've got the blue boxes. But if you want to, in the meantime, email it to me, then I can call it up whilst you're talking.
Okay, just hang on a second then.
Okay.
Right, well, if you can see it, shall we keep going?
We can. So keep going. We can.
Okay. All right. So talking about developing a culture of win, this whole topic of raising the bar is something that in Hilton we've actually been looking a lot at over the last year. And I think, you know, so many things have changed and wellness is changing on a constant basis. When we talk about creating a culture of win, ultimately everything we do is as a result of the team that we have. And I think it's really important that with any business, whether it's an independent business or whether it is a hotel facility, everything really starts at the top. And it's about the vision that's created from the beginning. The leader or the owner is the person that really is creating the atmosphere from the top down. And I really think that that is what defines whether we have a winning team or we don't. And so often when you talk to team members, and especially when you look at why people actually leave an operation, it's usually because of what happened above. So I think this is something that when we're looking at our businesses as leaders, really defining a clear plan for the business, setting the foundations, and remembering that it's not actually about you. In our region, very often what we find is owners come to us, they want a facility, and they're very involved, they're very hands-on, but it's always about what they like and about what they want. And what they actually forget is that at the end of the day, it's actually about what the guest wants and what is going to work for them. So I think that really, for me, when we're developing a culture of win, it's really starting at the top and looking at the leader, looking at the owner, and defining what is it that we want our vision to be. How do we set the tone from the very beginning? And then ultimately, it's about hiring the right people. So our biggest asset is our people. And I think sometimes we forget that, and we tend to hire people. We need to have people. We bring them on and we expect them to just stay with us regardless of what happens on a day-to-day basis. And people, I think, as we're finding now with the whole COVID situation, people are not an infinite resource, a finite resource. We're having real difficulties in our industry, fitness, spa, wellness at the moment, trying to find not only people, but the right people, most importantly. And as we look at the dynamic of people and what they're looking for out of their job, it's a very different mindset now to what it was maybe 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. People have a very different agenda. What is their expectation from their job? What is the expectation of the rewards that they're going to get from that job? So finding the right people, the people that are passionate about what they do, the people that want to be in this job, that want to develop in this job, rather than people that just want a job that's going to pay a salary. And I think getting this part right really sets the tone across our whole business structure. And what is the difference between great and okay? Well, again, hiring the right people helps us deliver great and amazing. We have a lot of people that are either mediocre at what they do, or maybe they have great hands, but they just don't have a great execution of the whole experience. And when I talk to different people, particularly in our organization, and they tell me about visits that they've had, not just to our properties, but to the competition, one of the things they'll always say to me is, well, hands-on was good, but you know what? The whole experience was just lacking in something. It just didn't tick the box. And I think with the people that we hire, it really is about setting the expectations. What is it that we expect from them? What is their specific job? Very often I find that people don't even have a job description. How can we expect them to know what to do if they don't even have a detailed job description? And how do we make sure that that approach is uniform across the same roles, for example, a therapist, an attendant, a receptionist, so that they really understand before they even join us, what is it that we expect from them? Making sure that there is inclusion. These are teams that we're trying to build. When people feel included, they really want to participate. When people feel excluded, all they actually want to do is leave. And it sounds simple enough, but trying to satisfy different nationalities, different expectations of people, different backgrounds, different experiences, it can be very difficult as a leader to deliver that sense of inclusion for everybody. But I think it's making sure that there is fairness across the board, that we take a cohesive approach as leaders, that we're mindful of where our team members come from, and we make sure that we really kind of fill the need that they have depending on where they're from and their level of skill. And we communicate. Very often you find that leaders actually keep the information to themselves and they don't share it across the board. And our team members are very much in the dark about maybe what is the financial expectation on them, what is happening in the business, and really what is happening from a guest perspective, or even how are they performing. And communication really keeps everything together. And then celebrating. Too often, in a structure, we're too busy. There isn't time. And we forget to celebrate the wins, and we forget to celebrate the good responses and even the bad responses, because we can always do better. And allowing people the ability to connect with each other, to have time with each other, to share ideas and really feel part of the operation that they're in. If I think about one of our operations as an example, we had a leader who on paper was extremely good, But as we moved down the road of the relationship with her, we found that culturally there was a sensitivity between her nationality and certain nationalities that she worked with. And what ended up happening was that she didn't believe in giving them responsibility. And she also didn't believe that they had the ability. And what quickly happened was that we had a very resentful team, a team that very much isolated themselves, and a leader that didn't understand what was happening. And so making sure that that communication and celebration of the team and allowing them the ability to breathe and to speak is so important. And likewise, coaching and developing. Too often I hear in bigger structures that, well, you know, they should be doing this. Why are they not doing this? If we don't tell them what is expected of them, and if we don't understand where their skill set is, it's very difficult for them to go any further than what their current ability is. And as a leader, I think it is so important that we are showing and telling. We are looking at the strengths and weaknesses in the team and how we balance that, but also how we actually enhance their skills and how we develop them. Nobody wants to work in a facility where that's the only job that they ever have, that there is no chance of developing or improving. And the teams that do extremely well are the teams that embrace the inclusivity and the ability to develop people. And at the same time, reward them. You know, there is nothing worse than being in an environment where it's just work, work, work. You feel like you're not respected for what you're doing, that your ideas are not embraced, and that there's nothing more to it. You're just a number. And rewarding people, whether it's, you know, an outing, whether it's a quick celebration in the facility, goes a long way towards motivating our team members and making them feel part of a winning team. And at the same time, it's all about balance. You know, we work very long hours in our industry. We have rotas that sometimes you're on a night shift and you switch to a morning shift the next day. It's very intensive what we do. And I think sometimes we do forget that the people that work for us are human, and we need to have a balance. And we really need to look at our operation effectively so that across the whole team structure, we do have coordination and fairness, and again, ultimately balance. And leading into fun, because we work too many hours. It's all about enjoying the environment that we're in. And when I look at the teams that do extremely well, the teams that have great leaders who are very open, who communicate, that share the good and the bad, but in a way that's very positive, and who recognize their team members and at the same time reward them and make it a fun environment to be in. For me, developing a culture of win is how we embrace the resources to us, the team members, and really how we lead them, show them the way, and allow them the ability to not only be themselves, but to contribute their ideas and to develop themselves in the process. And that leads into then, how do we keep our eyes on the ball or off the ball even? So it's really about the vision. I think, again, the landscape is forever changing in wellness at the moment. You know, what is our vision? There is a belief that you should be focused purely on certain goals. And typically in our structures, especially in hotel operations, we have our key performance indicators that we follow. And sometimes we can be very rigidly focused on these, but we kind of forget everything else that goes around it. So I guess the old adage of keeping your eyes on the ball, there is also a belief that maybe you shouldn't keep your eyes so firmly on the ball. You need to look at the road ahead of you, but you also need to look at everything that's happening around you. So having a clear vision from the beginning, setting out your stall and really understanding what is your business, but also revisiting that vision, because that vision will change as you go along the road. Not being complacent. I think sometimes we can become very tunnel visioned in what we're doing, And again, kind of going back to that focus of, well, this is my journey and this is my objective and this is what I'm sticking to. Looking at everything that we're doing and really kind of keeping that focus. And that also means looking at what's happening outside of us, you know, not just what's happening inside. And sometimes within our operations, when I talk to our teams and I ask them, well, you want to introduce a new concept, for example, what is happening in the environment around you? Do you have an awareness of what your competition is actually doing? And very often the response is no. I think that there is a gap with leaders today where they don't particularly look at doing regular competition checks. They're not connected to other leaders outside of their own operation. And I think the industry, one of the things I've always talked about is that we keep everything to ourselves. We really don't like to share information. I think it's so important that we really kind of spread our network and share, you know, things that are working, things that are not working, things that we are actually doing, to really make sure that from a business perspective, you know, we are aware of what's happening around us. And that also speaks to the local market, the demographic of the environment that we're in, you know, because that's forever evolving as well. You know, if I think about just working here in Dubai, how Dubai has changed in the 20 or so years that I've lived here, everything has changed, from how properties are developed to the type of people living here and to the disposable income that people have. And this really has a knock-on impact on what we're doing in the operation. And I think sometimes, again, we have a focus of, I'm a luxury property or I'm a full service property. I'm focused on external guests. I'm focused on a membership. I'm focused on in-house guests. But that demographic changes. And if we're not careful, we get left behind because we're not being relevant to the market that we are actually sitting within. And likewise, the trends. I think it's so important that we kind of keep up to speed with trends. When we're working in spa, there is so much happening and it's a really exciting and creative place. But when you're in a busy operation, and I think these days where we've got very tight resources, it can become difficult to keep that focus on what is happening in the industry, in the environment. And it doesn't mean that you have to embrace every single trend that comes along or every new piece of equipment or new product, but it does mean being aware. And as the trends are moving and we're moving into a new era of sustainability, you know, a lot of the hotel groups particularly are looking at the ESGs. And it's how do we embrace this, but at the same time be true and realistic to the vision of our business. Which then leads into investment. You know, whether you're a private business owner or whether you're part of a bigger group of hotels, being realistic about what you're working with. Too often owners will say, well, I invested this much money at the beginning, I'm not going to invest any more money. But again, competition is forever changing, and the consumer, our guest, sees and feels and experiences the environment that they're coming into. And whilst, you know, we focus very much sometimes on the actual treatment experience or the fitness experience, for example, the guest is actually seeing the whole experience, and maintenance, upkeep, reinvestment into upgraded equipment or development of spaces becomes extremely important. I think also long-term planning is also equally part of that investment of planning and time, so that we really are staying on top of things and just not, again, being complacent about the facility that we have. Whatever we started with 2 or 3 years down the road is not going to be the same facility. And that leads into blinkers. Do we have blinkers on or do we have blinkers off? And I think sometimes it is very easy to be in a situation where we are blinkered to the operation that we're running, to what we're handling, and to kind of doing the same thing day in, day out. You know, our guest is our number one priority. And that is what is going to keep the business coming in. So sometimes taking the blinkers off, really looking at the whole vision of our spa on a regular basis to really remember what is it that our guest is getting and what is it that's keeping the guest coming back. And then we talk about commercial growth, which again, you know, hopefully getting the people right and hopefully looking at what we're doing with our business and what is happening around our business and what is happening in the competition will lead us into commercial growth. But I think, again, understanding our business, but in the sense, when we talk about commercial growth, do we actually know our business? Do we actually know what's happening in our business? And this is not just applicable to the spa teams, this is also applicable to the greater leadership above the spa teams. I was having a conversation earlier on today with somebody about, very often we have spa leaders that are employed, and that's great because they're hired for the skill set and we like to give them a level of autonomy. But who is checking on them? Very often in hotel operations, we have general managers that spa is really not their number one priority, and it may not even be an area of knowledge for them. And when that is the case, quite often the spa leader is left to their own devices. And that can mean that sometime down the road, maybe there are challenges and maybe there are issues that could be too late to tackle. So I think taking a good look at your business on a regular basis, really understanding how you're performing, understanding what is happening with your people is extremely important, and I think is very often not done. Not having the right tools in place to actually help us understand the business. Very often I'll speak to leaders and they'll say, oh yeah, I didn't do my own budget. It was given to me by the finance team. Or, oh, I don't do profit and loss reports. It's done by the finance team. How can you actually understand where your business is at if A, you didn't actually set the criteria from the beginning, and secondly, you're not reviewing that business? So looking at the tools that you have in place to help you understand not just what your business is, but how it is performing become extremely important. And so looking at standards and metrics, you know, are we working with industry specific standards? And there are many tools out there. You know, Forbes is particularly one of the hotel standards that we're working with in the luxury space. LQA is another one. And then just looking more at, if you are in a hotel, your own hotel brand standards. But how do you use those? I mean, you may not be subscribed, for example, to Forbes or LQA, but there are many elements that you can kind of take from there and utilize within your business of how you review your business and how you put different protocols and practices in place. And likewise, what metrics, you know, how are we measuring the business? Too often it is at the mercy of the spa leader. The spa leader cannot be everywhere. So how do we utilize external resources to actually help us review our business performance? And we know that there are many bodies available to us. So things like industry recognition and awards is one tool, but also working with things like spa auditing companies who can come in and create a deep dive into what the guest experience is. Proves extremely useful in understanding our businesses. We have started working with a spa auditing resource, and interestingly, part of my role is to actually conduct operational visits and audits, and typically they're not very well received, as you can imagine. So recently I reached out to a general manager because there's been a lot of change in the structure of the spa leadership, and I asked, would you like me to come and do a spa visit, spa review, because there hasn't been one for a little while. And interestingly, his response was, no, it's fine, the spa supervisor is doing a great job. Now, he has also agreed to participate in the spa audit process, and He's just actually had his first audit response, and he has immediately responded and said, I'm really not happy with the score. So our response was, well, you know, the proof of the pudding lies in the actual results. You didn't want a visit, you didn't want support, but now you're looking at a audit response, which is less than desirable. And sometimes it takes something as robust as a external company creating these tools to help us understand our business and how it's really performing. And I think for independent business owners, sometimes we kind of have the rose-tinted goggles on, where we believe that our business is absolutely amazing, but we don't really deep dive into actually what's happening. And so I think looking at standards and looking at tools to help us measure the business are extremely important when it comes to looking at commercial growth. And probably one of the most important elements for me that I've talked about many times in the past is just really how do we make our business visible to the guest, you know, whether that's a hotel guest, whether it's an external guest. And that really goes across a whole range, starting with a marketing strategy and a marketing plan, but then really looking at, you know, what are the mediums that we're going to use? You know, what is our budget for marketing? Can we afford to employ an agency, for example, to do our PR and marketing activations? Can we have somebody dedicated to Instagram, for example? But if we're going to do it, we have to do it right. And very often when it comes to marketing, it's a stop-start activity. You know, we talk about marketing, we talk about what we want to do, but is there really any follow-through? And most importantly, is there really any deep thought behind what we do? I think one of the negatives for me when we talk about marketing is just really looking at, oh, I have to have a marketing plan as a spa leader, which means that you're just doing things for the sake of doing them. So January, I have to do one. February, I have to do one. Instead of really looking at where is it the business is not performing, what is not moving in terms of treatments, what is not selling through in terms of retail. And that gives a very different perspective then on your creating your marketing plan. You know, how supportive are our vendors? It kind of goes in two directions. There is one school of thought where we actually put a lot of focus on everything has to come from the product partner. And there's the other school of thought where the product vendor is not there to do all of the strategy for the actual spa. But I think it is a relationship at the end of the day. How do we work with our product partners to best support our business? As we all know, through COVID, there have been so many changes. You know, we've not been able to have testers and try products. We've had to change the way we perform treatments. And now we've kind of moved away and we've come back to more of a normal approach. It means that we can kind of get back on track with how we market our spa. But visibility is really the most important thing. How does your guest know you have a spa, especially if they're not a regular spa goer? How do they become aware of what you're about, what you're offering, and why should they actually come to your facility? More information, for me, is the best approach, because you can never have too much information about what your spa is, what you're offering, who your people are. So really looking at what we're doing, how we're doing it. And then when we talk about our menus, I think menus are so extensive. When you look at some of the menus in spas, it's a plethora of treatments. And the reality is how many of those treatments actually perform. And this goes back to, again, understanding our business. So really, do we deep dive into what is performing and what is not performing in our menu to really reassess, remove treatments, change treatments? This is an area that we are actively looking at within Hilton to really understand. You know, we probably have between 10 to 12 key performing treatments on the menu, and the rest really are in single digit in terms of performance. Now, we recognise that you still have to have, those showstopper, marketable tactics within your menu, but sometimes when you've got 50 to 60 treatments on the menu and people are not even looking at them, it's a pointless exercise. And this is something that spa leaders would benefit from really assessing, working either with hotel commercial teams, or obviously if it's an independent business themselves, looking at how are things performing. And in some cases, it's not a case of adding either, because sometimes people think that they need to add more. It's about really looking at what is going to add value. Do we actually have enhancements, for example, in our menu? Do we give people the option of adding on to those treatments? And then looking at the product. Again, product is another issue. When it comes to commercial growth, the level of investment we put into product and product that is just sitting on the shelf. And I guess if there's one takeaway from COVID, it's really been to really look at what we are investing into our product, because during that lockdown period where we weren't using product, we had a lot of spoilage and we had to write off a lot of products. And I think if anything has come as a positive, it's really how we look at the stocking levels in our spas to again make sure that we are not overstocking, that we're not heavily investing into product, but we're also looking at other ways of actually implementing products, particularly in the retail sphere. Consignment is an area that everybody kind of gets a bit consignment. Nobody wants to do that anymore. But consignment does exist still. And I think it can offer a great opportunity when it comes to adding value to our space. So one of the things that we've been looking at is, how do we provide more interesting retailing experience? Or maybe we do, showcases that maybe it's something that comes for a fixed period of time, and then we change it out to something else. And that keeps things very fresh. It allows guests to experience different products, but it also helps you stay relevant without investing heavy amounts of money. And just going back to those enhancements, again, looking at things that can really make a difference, whether it's a tester or a taster treatment into our space, or whether it's something that can actually expand the treatment that the guest was looking to take in the first place. I think overall, from all of the three elements that I've talked about today, it's really about taking decisions and taking effective decisions. Too often we procrastinate and we sit on things, or we hope that things will change and get better, but sometimes we leave things too long and the rot sets in. So it is really important within our environment now, where there really is an increased focus on performance, increasing our return on investment, and really delivering effectively revenue and profitable businesses, is to take those decisions and to take them quickly and effectively. And looking at our spaces as to what is actually working in our space. Again, do we have dead space? Do we have spaces that are just not working? And this really aligns with, again, the menu and the products, because very often we all have spaces that don't particularly work in our spas that maybe we could reinvest into, or maybe we could work with equipment suppliers to replan the spaces and revision the spaces. So for me, the takeaways when we're talking about getting it right, and one of the things that we're certainly looking at is setting it up right from the beginning. What is the vision for my business? How do I communicate that vision? Next is getting the people right. If we get the right people on board who are skilled to deliver what we intend to deliver, that have the right passion, that have the ability to be developed, these are the people that are going to actually deliver our business for us. And implementing the support and the resources needed to do this. And this is taking the time at the very beginning and on an ongoing basis to revisit our protocols, to revisit our training, and to revisit our support. So getting it right from the beginning, setting it up properly, getting the right people, and basically packaging it and creating the resources to deliver that business. If we can get these three things right, it hopefully allows us to deliver a much more effective business, a successful business. And by then assessing that business and taking prompt decisions, will hopefully lead us to a very positive and winning business model. So I'd like to move to question and answers. If anybody has any questions that they would like to ask Marissa, I think I'm going to try.
Yes, that's amazing. Thank you so much. Does anybody, so I have a question, but if everybody can prepare their questions. Sharon, when you were talking about inclusivity earlier on, what do you feel is fair to share with the team? So for example, do you feel that sharing the overall revenue of the business, sharing the expenses, sharing each therapist's turnover with each other and each therapist's target, and is that the type of inclusivity that works? I mean, would you recommend that? And can you dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, I think, again, you know, if we're going to talk about transparency in our operations, it really is important to be open with the information. Now, that doesn't mean sharing big problems and kind of the detail of things that have gone wrong, but it does mean sharing what is our expectation for a team to be collaborative, to have that win-win approach. People need to know what is expected of them. So just as I was talking about expectations on their actual job and role, I think it's equally important to share the expectations on them as a team and how that buys into the overall business. Because if you don't know where you're going, how can you get there? You know, I can come in as a therapist and work 8 hours a day. Maybe I can perform 6 massages. What does that mean to me? It probably means I know how much commission I'm going to get at the end of the day if I'm on commission. But how does it affect the business? I don't really understand why you want me to do more treatment. So I do think it's extremely important to have communication meetings with the team, to sit down at the beginning of the month and to share what that target or forecast is for the month, and where we can to break it down, because I think sometimes people working in the spa industry, especially if it's a therapist or an attendant, don't really understand the bigger picture of a budget plan or a profit and loss report. If we break it down into actual numbers and we make it understandable, it's a lot easier for them to actually understand where you want them to get to. So how does this financial number break down into the number of treatments or the number of retail products? That way they know, oh, wow, okay, now I know per day how many I need to deliver. And if that can be done on a daily basis through daily briefings, so it's not just a case of this is what we've got to achieve, but breaking it down into this is how much we've done, this is how many treatments we did, reevaluating today, this is what we have got to do. And when I was in operations, that was exactly what I used to do with them. And we would have a meeting, and I would also kind of put it in a structured printout report so that it just makes it a very clear picture for people of, if I average out what our average check is, our average retail product, I can then define exactly how many products, how many treatments I have to sell. It just gives them a much clearer picture of where they're going.
And you feel that it's fine to share their revenues with each other? So not just the targets, but actually what has been brought in. Yes.
I think it is. It is a sensitive topic, and especially when you work, for example, with Asian team members, because Asian team members typically don't like competition. They like to be a team, and they don't like to work against each other. But it's not about pulling people out. It's really about looking at who is producing. And I think it can really showcase to people that there is more that they can do if they're not performing. And I think, again, if it's done in a positive way and we're not browbeating people, it really allows them to feel, okay, it is important. I understand why I need to do my share, rather than, you know what, she performs all the time, I'm going to just sit back because I know she will get us through, because that's obviously not fair. And I think by sharing and being open, it does allow teams to become comfortable with each other. They don't kind of keep things to themselves, and it also allows people to be more effective in I can achieve more.
Okay. And then Andy's asked an interesting question is, have you adapted your leadership style since COVID and the new environment, or have you had to lead in a different way?
I think from my perspective, I think the one thing that we found is obviously trying to find good people has become very challenging. And in some cases, we don't particularly have spa managers. We maybe have more junior spa supervisors. And that means more hand-holding. So I think the focus on leading people through training, through sharing of information has become a lot more important. For me, I guess it's a little bit different being a regional because I'm not in the operation all the time, but I'm obviously developing the projects, and I'm obviously being an ambassador to the brand standards. So I think for me, it's been very important to really set the scene, not just with the spa leaders, but also with the operations teams, particularly in the hotel, so that we really get the support from across the board, and that the spa leader, whether it's a supervisor or manager, is not just left on their own. You know, this has to be kind of a 360 approach. And I just came back from one of our new projects that's going to open in a couple of months. And it was an amazing experience because we really had this full hotel team buy-in to what the spa was trying to do. And that's been because the spa leader and the spa team that are already on board have just been talking non-stop about what they're doing and what the products are, and now the whole hotel team is, oh my god, it's going to be amazing, and they're telling me what products we're having, so I'm like, wow, this is a first. But I think, you know, it is really important now to have very clear communication and really explain what it is that we're trying to achieve and what we're trying to deliver.
Okay, so that's quite interesting, far more open.
Yes. Yeah.
Almost run it like a family and not like a, you know, like a corporate structure, really.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to that inclusivity. You know, we are a team. You know, it's not levels of hierarchy. We are one complete team. So whether I'm in corporate office or whether I'm visiting a property, I'm still part of your DNA, and I'm here to be hands-on and support and help you.
Okay, and then there's another question. Shani's asking, at what intervals should processes and resources be reevaluated? Very often we have a set it and forget it approach.
Yeah, I mean, I think at a minimum, I mean, again, it depends what you're looking at, but I think on an annual basis, we really need to be setting a clear direction moving forward. You know, if you can set a clear strategy from the beginning of the year, with an outline of when you're going to implement things, it really gives you a clear approach, but it also allows you to give buy-in to different stakeholders. I think the problem is that we have lots of ideas, and when it comes to putting it down on paper and getting it action, that's a very different matter altogether. I think from a property level, for me, when I look at what's happening in terms of the structure, this is where I think, you know, you need to be looking at your business monthly, quarterly, bi-yearly, yearly, because again, you can never look at things in too much detail, and looking at it at the beginning of the year and never coming back to it means it's never going to happen. So a high level strategy from the very beginning of the year, and then I would advocate at least a quarterly review of where you're at with that strategy and the metrics that you're putting in place.
And then things like SOPs. So, I mean, those are often set it and forget it. Yeah. How often should a leader or a manager be training SOPs, reevaluating, revamping them? How often do you think? I mean, should it be a monthly and a part of the lead role, for example?
It should be. I mean, again, this is meant to be a live training document, this is something that not only, like you say, does it change, but it's also something that needs to be ingrained into people. And we know that when people are not being trained, they kind of take their eye off the ball, so to speak. And it's always a juggle in the spas. You know, when we're really busy, we're performing well financially, but other things go by the wayside.
Yeah.
When we have time on our hands to focus on training and development, we're not performing financially. So how do we find that balance? But it is extremely important that, that SOPs have to be trained on a regular basis. There should be a steward within the team, whether it's a head therapist, a trainer, who has a training plan, and it is part of that training plan that we are taking elements of the protocols, the SOPs, and we are keeping them fresh and alive. But as a spa leader, we should be reviewing them on a regular basis, you know, and whether that is that we review them every 6 months, we should be doing that, and we should be looking at what has changed in our business. And again, COVID is a classic example of where we had to change our business dynamic and implement new rules and regulations.
Yeah.
And again, now it's gone, we've had to take a bit of a step back. So again, you've had to change it again.
Again, yes. Okay, there's another question. I love that you include fun in the spa. Would you mind giving us examples of what you do in the spa for fun? Do you take days off to do team building or smaller events, or any examples?
Well, it would be great to take days off, but unfortunately that's not particularly possible. But what we do try and do, and again, this is where we try and break it down into multiple days, because to try and get the whole team together is obviously the biggest challenge. So to make sure that everybody is included, we repeat it over multiple days and sessions. And it can be anything from, I have team leaders that basically bring nibbles and bites in at the end of a week, we'll have a little bit of a get together and sharing of what's gone well, what maybe hasn't gone so well, and have just some treats for the team. Through to basically arranging to go out and see something of interest that gets people out of the spot dynamic, gets them communicating together, because in the team you're always going to have your silos, but when you get the team together as a group, it really stimulates a lot of ideas, a lot of camaraderie. So just on the flip side of that, I guess, just another thing that kind of, I guess, created a sense of delight. Last week I was in Kuwait, for example, and my perception is that I'm there to support the team and I'm there to give them as much information as possible. And on the last day when I was leaving, they wanted to give me something, and they gave me a gift of a book. And it's just a small book, it's like a reading book. But they said, we want to give you a lasting memory of our team. We want you to remember every time you pick up that book, we want you to remember that it was us that gave it to you, and to remind you of the time that you had with us here during your visit. And I just thought that was so sweet. And, you know, it's the smallest things can make such a difference.
That's amazing. That's beautiful. Wow. Okay. All right. Then there's another question. My question is about coaching and development. I see many different spas and teams, and they all require different levels of coaching and guidance. So what would your approach be to dealing with so many different teams? Would you base your coaching on revenue, on personality types, on gaps in knowledge, or the dynamics within the team?
I think, you know, again, to have a successful team, it's really how we plug the gaps. And we're always going to have strengths and weaknesses, and those strengths and weaknesses can actually work very well together. But for me, it's two areas. One is how we fill the gaps, but it's also how we develop people, because I want to have a team of people that are constantly moving forward, that are looking to move up to their next role, for example. So I think, you know, it can't just be about performance, because then basically it can be seen not as developing people, it can be seen as a bit of a punishment in some cases, because it's almost like saying, well, you're not doing as well as everybody else, you have to have some training. So I think if we can take it from an approach of, okay, from the very beginning, when we're looking at people, what are your skills, and we're looking at how they're performing, then it's really how we fill the gaps in knowledge, how we can develop their skill set and let them embrace expanding their knowledge and learning new skills, because it helps them become a lot more rounded, and it helps them develop into better people, and it helps them develop into better positions as well. So I think you've got to look at everybody in the team. You know, you have to have a training plan across the board. There are going to be core competencies that you want to train everybody in. So like we just talked about the SOPs, for example, that needs to be something, there has to be a core training plan that is for everybody. And then from there, you need to break out the specifics of the different individuals in the team and have training plans that are specific to them individually.
Okay, sounds brilliant. Okay, this next question might be a little bit difficult to answer at this point because it's quite a broad question, but it's what would you advise on reaching targets for a startup business, self-employed, post-COVID, or at least even to be able to break even, taking into consideration a clear and effective marketing strategy and advertising market segment?
I'm not sure if this is a single entity, as in a self-employed individual, or yes, a business.
Self-employed.
So I think, again, it's really looking at the cost base as well. You know, what is it that you're doing? You know, are you a freelance mobile therapist, or are you actually in your own space, your own facility? Overheads, you know, sometimes in spas, it's the one thing that people try to be profitable by purely controlling their costs rather than looking at how they actually make the business more revenue focused. I think when it's a single entity and you're a single person, if you've done everything you can from a marketing perspective, I mean, there's always more that you can do. I think you really need to understand what is the client feedback to your business. You've got to stay in contact with the clients, and it's about building that relationship. The more people that you can get coming back on a regular basis, the less marketing that you have to do. So I think the focus for me would be very much about that communication, that interpersonal connection with each guest that you have, the touch points, as to how do you get them to come back on a repeated basis. You know, things that we've looked at are spa membership programs, for example, where it can be, for example, a loyalty based membership over a 6 or a 12-month period. And what you can do is, for example, if it's, let's say, a 6-month period, you say, okay, I'm going to take 1 treatment per month, and this would be the cost. I'm actually going to discount it by so much, and that's what the guest is going to pay. But on top of that, I'm actually going to give them something more that makes them feel that they really are part of something. So maybe I'm going to do a workshop every so many months. Maybe I'm going to do an informative session, but something that is above and beyond. It's not going to cost me a lot to do, but it ties people in. I think when people feel that they're part of something, it makes them more inclined to come back. If you're having to find new clients all the time and you've got a churn, then that's where it becomes much more difficult.
Totally. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Sharon. There's a lot of thank yous here from everybody.
Pleasure.
Thank you for the informative session, and thank you for sharing such inspiration. Shani also says this has been so valuable. Thank you for your time and your knowledge. So thank you.
Thank you.
And then also speaking into what you were chatting about earlier, I just want to let everybody know that's online that we are actually doing a session on the 27th of July of exactly what you spoke about earlier, which is a P&L, how to actually populate it, complete it, understand it, and also giving some benchmarks from our industry. So what you should be aiming for in terms of a cost of goods. And so everybody make sure that you attend that 27th of July session, because that is going to be focused exclusively on a profit and loss. So it's so interesting that you brought it up, because a lot of people do get their accountants to do it, which is the wrong way.
Yes. No, and thank you. I really appreciate all the positive response. Thank you. You never know how much to talk about or what specifically. So if it's been helpful, I'm really, really happy to hear that. And thank you for allowing me to be part of this program.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And we hope to see you again and speak to you again really soon.
Likewise, pleasure. Thank you so much, Marissa. And thank you everybody for listening.
Thanks, Sharon.
Thank you.
Lots of love. Hey, bye. Cheers, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.